You know when your pet comes back inside after roaming around the yard? Ever wonder what they might be bringing in with them? Well, it turns out it could be more than just leaves and dirt. Some pretty wild new research shows that our cats and dogs are accidentally giving rides to an invasive worm, helping it spread from one backyard to the next.
Now, this might sound like a quirky little science story, but the issue is actually a really big deal. Invasive species are, as this quote makes clear, a major threat. They can completely disrupt local ecosystems, and they end up costing us a ton of money. So figuring out every single way they spread, well, that's absolutely crucial.
For a long time, we thought we had the main answer for how these land flatworms were getting around the globe. The idea was that they were hitching rides in the soil of potted plants, traveling from one continent to another through the plant trade.
But here's the thing. That explanation had a massive hole in it. Scientists and even just regular gardeners were totally stumped. See, these worms are incredibly slow. So how on earth were they just popping up in a neighbor's yard, especially when no new plants had been brought in? It was a real mystery. How were they jumping the fence?
Okay, so to really get how big of a breakthrough this was, you first have to understand what a puzzle these little worms really were. So, what are we dealing with here exactly? A terrestrial flatworm is a predator that lives down in the soil, and it loves to eat things like earthworms and snails. But the most important thing to remember about them is what they can't do. They can't fly, they can't swim, and they move at a pace that makes a snail look like a race car. And that super limited mobility is precisely why these new local infestations were so baffling. The whole potted plant theory just didn't explain how a worm could get from my garden to your garden. There had to be something else going on, some other transport system.
And it turns out the answer was literally right under our noses, just trotting through our backyards. The clue that finally cracked this case wide open didn't come from some fancy high-tech lab. Nope, it came from thousands of regular people.
Researchers in France decided to dig through years and years of data submitted by the public, and boom, they found a pattern. 15 different times, people had reported finding these exact flatworms physically stuck to their cat's or their dog's fur.
And right here, this is the evidence, the smoking gun. This photo was sent in by a citizen scientist, and it shows the invasive flatworm Caenoplana variegata just clinging to a dog's coat. This was the visual proof that had been missing for years. And look, this wasn't some lucky guess. This discovery was the result of a huge long-term project. We're talking about analyzing thousands of reports from a whole network of dedicated public observers. It's just an amazing example of how powerful citizen science can be.
Still think it sounds a little unlikely? Okay, well, check out this number. Researchers did some math and came up with a conservative estimate that all the cats and dogs in France travel a combined, get this, 18 billion kilometers outside every single year. When you think about that much ground being covered, the idea of a worm catching a ride doesn't just seem possible, it seems almost inevitable.
But that brings up another question. Why this specific flatworm? There are other invasive ones in France. Why wasn't anyone finding them on their pets? Well, it turns out this particular species has a couple of biological superpowers that make it the perfect hitchhiker.
Yeah, in all of those thousands of reports, only one species was ever spotted taking a ride on a pet's fur, the Caenoplana variegata. None of the other 9 invasive flatworm species in the area ever seemed to use this furry taxi service.
And the reason why comes down to 2 key things. First, this worm makes a mucus that is unbelievably sticky. It probably evolved it for hunting, but it works perfectly for gluing itself to the fur of a passing dog or cat. And second, and this is a huge advantage, it can reproduce asexually. That means all it takes is one single worm to get dropped off in a new garden, and it can start a whole new colony all by itself.
So why should we care about this? It's more than just a weird biology fact. These flatworms, remember, they prey on earthworms. And earthworms, they're basically ecosystem engineers. They're these tiny architects that keep our soil healthy and fertile. So when these predators show up, they can throw that whole delicate balance out of whack, affecting everything from how well your garden grows to the health of the entire local ecosystem. You know, discoveries like this one, powered by everyday people, are just so fascinating to break down. If you agree and you want to see more deep dives into complex topics like this one, please just take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It really is a huge help.
All right, so now that we understand the problem, let's talk about the solution. And the great news is that pet owners can be on the front lines, playing a huge part in stopping the spread.
First step is just being proactive. The best times to check your pet are in the spring and the fall. That's when these worms are out and about the most. Give their fur a really thorough check after they've been playing in the garden or out in a wooded area. A simple flea comb is actually a fantastic tool for this, since it can help you find a worm that might be hiding deep in their coat.
Now, what if you actually find one? Don't freak out. Here's the safe way to remove it. First, protect yourself. Use gloves or a pair of tweezers. Then, just gently pull the worm from the fur, going in the same direction the hair grows. Afterwards, you'll want to clean the spot with some warm water and pet-safe soak to get rid of any of that sticky slime. Just keep an eye on their skin for any irritation. And of course, if it's really matted in there, it's probably best to call a vet or a professional groomer.
And that's it. It's such a simple action, right? A quick check of your pet's fur. But it's a powerful new way for all of us to help protect our local environment. It turns our furry companions from being these unknowing accomplices into frontline defenders of biodiversity. It just goes to show you, sometimes the biggest discoveries and the easiest solutions are waiting for us right in our own backyards.